Okay guys, so let's move on, and we will be doing some master studies this week. But before we move on, I wanted to share with you one of the principles that I keep following whenever I'm doing like master studies. We all know that learning from masters is very important, right? Like we do it since we are born. When we were small as a kid, right? We were learning from our parents. They were our masters, right? We would ask questions. And first we would just copy them, right? When we were very small, we would just copy them, do whatever they do. But once we become more intelligent, we, instead of copying, we learning all those tools and starting using them as we want, and we become a unique person, right? We're not longer a copy of our parents. We are a really nice fusion of our mom and dad, right? So our goal, everyone's goal as an artist, to become a unique person. So when it comes to masters, we do have a tendency to jump and copy everything. I know it myself, and I'm pretty sure most of you guys will recognize it. Like, let's say if there's a good guy around there, like doing what we are doing. Let's say like everybody loves Jamie Jones as a painter. He's a brilliant guy, right? Jamie Jones is a hero, and because he's so good, everybody starts copying him. Like, which is great. He's a proper master of what he's doing. But what all we see is just like infinite amount of Jamie Jones copies. What I am saying, it's good to copy Jamie Jones. I did it myself. But instead of trying to copy him, go and find a person he was inspired by and try to learn from him. Maybe he was obviously inspired by Craig Mullins, right? Try to learn from this guy, or maybe go even deeper. Craig Mullins was obviously inspired by Sargent. And instead of trying to copy someone who is like living today with you and growing as an artist as well, try to go and find a root source. Like, go backwards. I'm pretty sure there was someone else who John Sargent learned from. Zorn. I'm not sure about timeline, but pretty sure he looked up someone in the past. So if you can find this root material, because what made these guys a unique person is the fact that they copied some master that they adored and that they found. So when it comes to master studies, I always prefer to go deep and to find the root source, the main source of inspiration. And the deeper you dig, the more chance you have to find something very unique. So that's why this week we are not making studies of Star Wars. So like, I love Star Wars, like everybody loves Star Wars. We're not doing master studies of Terminator or like Aliens, my favorite movies. Or not any of the recent movies. We're going backwards. We're going back when people didn't have all the technology that allowed them to do crazy things. We're going back, and we're gonna study 3 movies basically. I will give you an assignment. The first one will be Citizen Kane. Second one will be Seven Samurai. And the last one will be Andrei Tarkovsky, Ivan's Childhood. Because I think those movies completely utilize the idea of the time frame that I have for myself in order to build the stories, because they didn't have much tools and technique. All they had is a very good principle base designs, base of principles, and they have less of technical part because they didn't have those crazy cameras and cranes and all that stuff. That's why they were very creative. And this is what we are aiming for. We're aiming to be more creative. So yeah, let's start and do some master studies with you. And the way I want you to do master studies, I don't want you to paint anything. This week is all about just thinking about those short design principles that I shared with you and analyze those frames. Pick up any one of those 3 movies, Citizen Kane, Seven Samurai, and Ivan's Childhood, and try to analyze and actually support those principles with the stuff that you see. For example, let's start with this frame. Like, what I can see clearly, remember I was telling you about depth of field, for example. If this was a modern concept art, you probably would, like, all of these guys in the foreground, they will be out of focus because we know we need some foreground element, right? Well, we love that stuff. We go and just blur everything like this. So if this was a modern concept art, that would be probably like this. But we know, in order to be very natural, if this one is a wide camera lens, because we're seeing a lot of background, so it's wide, and we know less DOF. So basically, the way I want you to do this study is pick up those frames and break them apart like this. Analyze what kind of camera lens we're using, how high. Our camera is pretty low because we want to show the power of this event over here. There is something going on. That's why we placed our camera pretty low. So if you analyze those low camera and light, what are we using as a light? Silhouettes, because all we want to see is this action over here. That would be enough for me if you spent like 10 minutes per frame taking those notes, drawing, like emphasizing depth of seeing depth of field, trying to break those down. Let's see another frame, like for example this one. You can clearly see we have really low camera over here, low camera, because we want to emphasize the greatness and the power of this character. How about camera lens? We don't see a lot of background, which means it's probably long lens, right? Which is also supported but by amount of depth of field. You see it over here, right? And lighting as well, like there is a small light source coming from here just to emphasize, to break him from the background that we're seeing here. Let's pick up any one of those frames will tell you the reasons, the specific reasons why those guys use those cameras, use those angles, use that positional lighting. Because once again, they didn't have all the technology. They didn't have this technological gap which we trust on today. They only trusted the creative part, and they only trusted on their fundamental knowledge and understanding. And these movies are brilliant. Like for example, take a look at Citizen Kane. It's probably one of the most like graphic looking movies because the way it uses and utilizes all the design principles. This is the second thing that I want you to analyze as well. Use your knowledge from previous 2 lessons as well. Look the way they used graphic design. For example, they used for example, if you open a scene, this one over here, you see the way they use zigzag, the zigzag composition that I was talking about. You can see it clearly over here. We've got the zigzags that allow us to look at the frame, right? And to have this really nice composition. And if you can see that the perspective of the floor is like this, so we naturally having this zigzag form over here to help the composition and just to improve the storytelling. And every one of these frames, for example, this one as well. Like, let's just analyze this frame properly. So what are we having here? First, we're having a lot of depth of field, which means it's a long lens. It's definitely not a wide lens. And we see less deformation as well. Nothing is deformed. First, sorry. Long lens. More depth of field. See this zigzag motion as well. So we're seeing all this frame with our eyes traveling inside the frame. Contrast. The way that you use contrast, for example, you have this guy and you have white background, light background against dark foreground. Especially you can see it on this frame. Sorry for skipping it. But yeah, over here you see the way they break up using just contrast and repetition. They break up this character. You can easily see him because this part is pretty bright and the character himself is pretty dark. And these frames are amazing. Every frame in Citizen Kane is just so beautifully done, and it's all done by using very basic core principle knowledge of composition and cinematic principles, and using a lot of creative solutions rather than relying on techniques, tools, and whatever. And that's pretty much concludes our lesson number 3. Now we have all the tools and all the knowledge to start actually to storytell our stories, and that's what we will be doing starting from lesson number 4. It was pretty cool, pretty good one. It's an amazing experience for me. So see you in lesson number 4. Thank you very much.